This is a lettuce, and look at that. Aren't those just super cute blooms? Super cool yellow flowers. I love it. That is just lettuce that has gone to seed, and I'm letting it do its thing. I am excited, as always, to give you a tour of my garden this week. It has struggled a little bit in the heat and lack of rain, but there's also a lot growing super well. So I'm going to show you around, show you what is growing, what I've been planting and harvesting. This is my small scale, no dig heirloom garden in central Pennsylvania. For reference, our average last frost date is May 15th. Our average first frost date is October 15th. So we still have a lot of growing time left. My spring garden is pretty much wrapped up. Summer garden is in full swing, and I'll be planting my fall garden in a few weeks. Although, as you will see today, I'm pretty much constantly planting and constantly harvesting, which is one of the fantastic things about no dig and having a lot of compost and healthy soil, and then just having the mindset of always harvesting, always planting, always growing something, rather than just putting your garden in and it growing. Having that mindset has dramatically increased our productivity in the garden. Not a whole lot new in this bed. I've been harvesting chard. I pulled out a bunch of beets. We're gonna harvest some more beets because I want to make pickled beets. But I have noticed that this Ice Queen lettuce has been doing really well even in this hot, dry weather. I haven't actually harvested any yet, so I'll update you on that, but it's been growing really well compared to my other lettuce, which is one of the reasons I grew that. It's supposed to do well in the heat, so I'll let you know how that goes. I am watering. We're supposed to get rain later, but no guarantee. So I'm watering a couple of my raised beds, especially where I just planted. Dill has bloomed, and now the seeds are forming, and there's still a lot of insects on the ones that are blooming, which is great. And then I'll let the seed pods continue to mature and dry. I'll harvest some to use for pickles, some to use for seed next year. Dill seed is really easy to save. Just kind of wait till it turns brown on the plant, cut off the head, let it dry completely, and then I usually store it in a paper bag until next year. My struggling cucumbers that I planted here and then didn't water, and it was hot and dry, but they're hanging on, and I've been watering them, and you can see they're starting to do a lot better. Tiny Tim tomato, getting lots of green tomatoes on it. And I tucked some lettuce in here. And the tomatoes will kind of give it some shade. And at this point in the year, I do try and kind of tuck lettuce plants in where they're gonna get a little shade from neighboring plants. That doesn't always happen. Like you can see, these are right here in the front, but they're doing well. I have bush beans that just came up here. I had been watering those specifically so that they would germinate, and they are doing really well. I just transplanted in some zinnias. I always like to have transplants on hand, even things that you don't necessarily have to start as transplants, like zinnias. It allowed me to tuck them into this bed after I pulled the garlic out. So it's just nice to always have transplants around to fill in spaces in the garden. It looks a little limp at the moment. That's because I was just planted and then watered it. But this is all Aunt May's bib lettuce in through here and under my broccoli. Again, that'll kind of provide it some shade while it gets established. I did harvest some more side shoots this morning off of the broccoli, and it looks like I may still get some more, so I'm letting that continue to go. We've gotten more side shoots than we did get, than broccoli from the main head, but that's okay. That it's broccoli, it tastes great. So we've been enjoying that in salads or grilled. And I'm super excited about the black strawberry tomatoes. They are looking gorgeous, and I can't wait for those. I have been pruning my tomatoes pretty intensely. I don't know exactly what it is, but they've been getting some brown spots on some of the lower leaves. So I've just been keeping them pruned up pretty well, and that is, they seem to be still thriving. I had some trellis space, so I stuck in some honey rock-a-melon transplants. You can see the kohlrabi back there doing awesome. And some more tomatoes. This must be the ox heart. Let me see, bread and salt. Yep, bread and salt. You can tell by the shape of the tomato. That's an ox heart type tomato, all doing really well. Every once in a while I just come through and help them onto the trellis. I have broke a few branches. They just prune those off, but for the most part I just try to gently weave them up through as they grow, and that works really well. This is our radish that I let go and bloom for the insects. And I've got this row of beets here. I already harvested some beets and some onions. I'm gonna make pickled beets and pickled onions, but I want to get a few more beets. So we're gonna see what's going on here. I multi-sow beets and then transplant them. Sometimes I direct sow them, but most of the time I transplant them. So you can see they're growing really close together, but they are growing well. So they're thriving even though they're planted close together. And I'm just gonna go through and I'm gonna pull out some of the larger beets. That's a really nice size, especially for pickling. There's a golden beet. I love golden beets, especially on my salad. So this one I might keep out for salad. Oh, there's some really nice beets in here. I try not to stand in my raised beds, but sometimes I have to reach, and that's okay. There's another really nice one. And this is a really nice albino beet. All of these are delicious. Now, when pickling, the red beets will dominate. Oh, you can see that's a different red. I mixed a bunch together, so I'm not sure exactly of the varieties. But the red beets will kind of take over color-wise when you pickle. Come on out of there. But that's okay. So I'll have red pickled beets. I might keep a few of the other ones out for salads and fresh eating, and that's probably enough. So I'm gonna let the rest of these grow a little bit more. I'll probably try to water them, although beets do pretty good with minimal water. But it is dry in there. And on that note, when you're watering, it can be really easy to you water a little bit, the surface of the soil looks wet, but if we go down just a tiny bit, that was half an inch, it's dry. So when you're watering, make sure you water enough that it's getting wet way down in. And that's one of the reasons why I have the hose over there just running into my raised bed. I don't want to waste water. I'm not wasting water. I'm just letting it run in so that it can soak in that bed. It gets wet down in, and then you don't have to water as frequently. So just check when you're watering to make sure that you get everything watered thoroughly. I've still been harvesting chives about every week. And now we've got our bucket full of beautiful beets that we will pickle. And like I said, I'm gonna pickle some of those onions, and then I'll let the rest of the onions keep growing. They're not gonna get too much larger, but they're gonna store better in the ground for now. This is what I already harvested that's wilted a little bit because it's so hot, but I'll get this home and soak it in cold water and then bring it back to life. These are tiny Tim tomatoes off our dwarf tomato plants. Some cucumbers. They got a little bit bigger than I like for pickles, but that happens. So I'm hoping to make pickles later. I have some more cucumbers at home. And then there's some of the side shoots of broccoli. I'll trim off some of the leaves and we'll just grill this entire piece of broccoli. I'm also going to harvest some lettuce. I'm going to take my basket with us. So I want to harvest some lettuce. Yellow squash coming there. Those are the pickling cucumbers on the trellis. I had those covered with insect netting or row cover until they got well established to protect them from cucumber beetles and squash bugs. And then I took them off and they've been doing really well. I'm still seeing the cucumber beetles, but we kind of seem to be between their life cycles or something because they're not really problematic at the moment. Although the squash bugs are, and I see there's some of their eggs there, so I'll scrape those off. I saw some immature, I don't know if you can see that gray, that's an immature squash bug. So I've been trying to smash those when I see them. But the populations right now are manageable, so I've been able to actually grow squash, which in the spring or like early June, it's a little bit harder for me to grow squash unless I completely keep them covered. This time of year, there seems to be fewer problems, I think just because of how I manage them and their life cycle. But I'm always diligent about, you know, checking on those. I staked up this pepper plant because I had it growing in with the garlic. I pulled the garlic and then it kind of flopped a little bit, so I just staked it up till it gets stronger on its own again. But it's got banana peppers on there growing. Oh, I don't know what I just did. Well, all right, we'll see how this goes. I just did something to my camera. I also planted some more yellow or golden zucchinis here from transplants, and I'll water those in, or I did water those in. I'll water them in a little bit more. And then there's my bush beans. Now over here I have the onions. This is where I was harvesting onions. I'll leave these in here. Again, they're not gonna do too much more growing. Onions grow and bulb based on day length, and then they get to a certain point and they stop growing. But they're healthy looking. The tops are great looking. So I will just harvest them as we want to use them. And then if I see the tops really starting to die off or any problems with them, I'll go ahead and harvest the rest. Those are not pretty butterflies. Those are cabbage moths. They're a nuisance. But it's really hard to catch them in the moth stage. So I tried to get their eggs and caterpillars off of my brassicas. I planted some zinnias in here from transplants, and then I'll probably interplant some other, maybe some beets or lettuce, something else I'll interplant in there. That is, oops, I don't know if you can see it. That is a pink lady beetle. That's a good insect in the garden. Here's a tiny Tim tomato. They typically don't need staking, but that one for some reason is like lopsided, so I staked it up. Some more beets, kohlrabi, Cauliflower, I've been pulling off or pinching off all of the caterpillars, cabbage moths, things like that. I had a few plants that got really bad, so I just cut them out, but I've been trying to keep them going. Here's another succession of beets I planted a little bit later than the ones we just harvested, but they are, you can see they're doing really well. So I'll put 2 seeds in each soil block. I use 2-inch soil blocks. I'll put 2 seeds in each soil block, and then I don't thin them. And I just plan them out as whatever they end up as. And that works really well. And I can grow a lot in a small space that way. Another tiny Tim tomato there. It's got a lot of tomatoes on it. Transplanted in some more zinnias here. Some of the lettuce that I've been harvesting from, and this one here, actually it's been doing well because it's getting shade from this volunteer cucumber. So I'm gonna go ahead and harvest this lettuce. Some lettuce I just will take the outer leaves off of, depending on the type of lettuce. So this lettuce I will cut the outer leaves off of, and then it'll continue to regrow. This is Aunt May's Bib lettuce. What I typically do with that is just cut the entire thing off just above the surface of the soil. So it's like, you know, one and done, although you could pull some of the leaves off. And this is my nice row of lettuce here. It's been struggling a little bit in the heat, but I've been harvesting some of the outer leaves from that. This is summertime variety here. I'm not super thrilled with that, but I haven't harvested a lot of it yet, so still giving it a chance. And a couple other varieties through here. I've got bush beans that are blooming, and then more Aunt May's Bib lettuce through here. The flower pot is my toad house. They were living in my vole traps, and I didn't really want them in there because there's mouse traps in there, so I'm hoping that they'll live in the flower pot. But look at these tomatoes. Look at this. Tomatoes. Let's see what these are. More bread and salt, the ox heart type tomatoes. So again, you can see I pruned them back pretty good and have them going up the trellis. But look at this. These are Cherokee purple tomatoes here, and they're just like loaded. That plant is just loaded with tomatoes. Super excited about that. This is hillbilly potato leaf. Oh, excuse me. Hillbilly potato leaf is one of my favorite yellow tomatoes. And these are 2 homestead tomatoes. So I gotta show you this. So I planted this plant back in May, and a deer or something came in and just like snipped the top right off. And I was like, well, that's probably a goner. But I just left the plant and I planted another one beside it. Well, you can see they're like exactly the same size now, and I'm just leaving them both grow. So apparently that plant just is a very resilient plant. Homestead tomato, that's actually why I'm growing them, because they're supposed to be a really resilient plant, and so far they're living up to that. So keep you updated on that. And what else we got? This is another homestead tomato here. Can't wait for those. And then what do you got? We got Nepal here. It is about the only plant. Oh, it does have some on it. I was gonna say it's about the only plant that doesn't have fruit on it, but it does. It's just hiding there. So I'm really excited that all my tomatoes are doing well, even though they've had some yellowing on the bottom leaves. I don't know, I just kind of attribute some of that to being normal growth of tomatoes, at least in our climate. It is what it is. I prune them off. Some years I keep up with it better than others, and they seem to do fine. So that's what is going on with my tomatoes. I have been using boards a couple different places. I use boards in a couple different ways in my garden, but sometimes what I'll do is I'll lay them along the edge of a bed for a week or two, especially in hot weather, and it'll kill any weeds that might have been starting to creep, you know, into the bed. If the bed edge is starting to creep in, I'll just lay a board out along there, and that helps with that. Also, I do the same thing along my raised beds. I will weed trim, but if I can get these boards around here to kind of keep the edge down, like I did that on this side, and you can see there's space here, then we can mow right up to that. And because it's boards like that, it doesn't, like, it to me looks totally fine to have them there. I just move them every so often, and that helps with edging and bed management. That's nasturtium that volunteered, and I planted some zinnias in. This is where I harvested garlic, and the soil under this straw is still damp, so mulching is great for holding moisture. I don't mulch everything because it can be a habitat for slugs, and when I'm growing things like lettuce, the straw can get in the lettuce, and that's not, you can get slimy lettuce or straw in your lettuce, and that's not ideal. But there are a lot of great options for using straw as mulch, especially to retain moisture. So I'm gonna start planting some things in here and leave as much of the mulch as I can to help retain that moisture. All right, now back over here. Here's some more of that Ice Queen lettuce that seems to be just thriving right now. So we'll have to see like flavor and texture, what it ends up being. It seems like it might be a little different texture wise than some lettuces, but we'll give it a try. Here's my cabbage. I've been diligently trying to remove cabbage worms from that, and hopefully I'll get those cabbage harvested in a week or two. They're doing pretty good. They're getting a pretty nice sized solid head on them, so I'll keep an eye on them, but maybe in the next week or two I'll harvest those. You can see this lettuce has not been watered, so it has a really dull, lifeless color to it. You can tell it's not liking the lack of moisture. I harvested one yellow squash from this plant a few days ago, and you can see there's already 2 more coming. I will let them get just a little bit bigger, like 6 to 7 inches, and then I'll harvest those. There's a darn cucumber beetle. But the populations are manageable right now. So I am actually getting squash, which is super exciting. And then I've got dahlia growing, a couple dahlias, some skyscraper sunflowers. I always like to have flowers planted in my garden. So everything is actually doing pretty good. I lost some things due to some of the heat and dry weather, but we are recovering. This is my insect bed. I've got marshmallow there at the end, wild bergamot or bee balm, echinacea, rudbeckia, and calendula weeds, and more marshmallow, and then my compost piles and my food forest back there, but we will tour those another time. And I think that is about it for this week's tour. I'm gonna go harvest some lettuce and then go home and get all of these veggies taken care of so that they are not sitting in the heat. I would love to hear how your garden is going. Please send me a message or comment and let me know how your garden is going this year. And if you like these videos, please visit our website, theheirloomfarmer.com, and join our email list so that we can stay in contact. Thank you, and God bless.